Patrick.
Hey, Michael J.
So, standard with Throne of Eldraine deck lists falling out of the sky already.
That happened quickly.
Yeah.
I was just like, boom, like right out of the gate, and already we're seeing an impact. Like, I mean, you knew there's going to be a whole new world anyway because of the rotation, but there's some really cool new stuff going on.
Yeah, totally different stuff. I don't know, like, where do you want to start?
To me, there's no question. To me, one of the big cards that I really, after thinking about it more, and I wrote about it a little bit last week, a fair bit, because I just think that Doom Foretold is absolutely fantastic.
So, Doom Foretold is an enchantment, and it's 2, a white and a black, and it's kind of smokestack-ish, right? It's like smokestack plus, except it can't mana screw you.
Well, so one way to think of it is smokestack. I think it's a little bit closer to a much better The Abyss.
Yeah?
Yeah. This card is better than The Abyss.
So, The Abyss destroys creatures, right? It actively destroys creatures. Doom Foretold destroys non-token permanents, right?
Non-land, non-token
permanents. Non-token permanents. Per what I said before, it's a smokestack that can't master you. But, like, you're always going to have non-token permanents even if you're the Doom Foretold deck. For example, Doom Foretold is a non-token permanent.
Yeah, but you want the other person to run out before you. Because, like, this payoff is just fantastic, right? Because if they ever don't have a non-land, non-token permanent, you do lose the Doom Foretold, but you draw a card, and you get a 2/2 Knight that's easily worth, with Vigilance, it's easily worth a card, and they got to discard a card, and you drain them for 2, so it's kind of a draw 4.
It's like a mini Cruel Ultimatum, right?
Yes.
Tiniest little Cruel Ultimatum for I guess 4/7 the mana. So Doom Foretold, it can be played, I think, in multiple different styles of decks. The deck that's emerged so far has been an Esper type control deck, though, right? So I can tell you, I participated in that arena promotion, MTG arena promotion, where you can play any deck, and I got my butt kicked by, I think, this deck. And one of the things that I loved about it so much was the combination of Wishclaw Talisman and Doom Foretold. So Wishclaw Talisman was a card that I was excited about, but, you know, it does have some downsides to it, but it has pretty cool job in this Esper control deck played by Ariane.
Yeah, so, I mean, Wishclaw Talisman is... I don't think it's actually even the centerpiece here, but it does. One, it works well with Teferi, of course. Obviously, with Teferi, the whole, Wishclaw Talisman going and getting Teferi package is pretty good anyway, albeit a little slow. But and then the planar cleansing aspect of this deck makes Wishclaw Talisman pretty good, because you can just Wishclaw Talisman on your turn, give your opponent the Wishclaw, and then planar cleansing when you have 7 mana, and you've just got the best of it, right? But then finally, and this part's super, super, super important, Wishclaw Talisman is an artifact. This deck is making fantastic use of Dance of the Mans. X white blue, sorcery, return up to X target artifact and or non-aura enchantment cards each with converted mana cost X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. If X is 6 or more, those permanents are 4/4 creatures in addition to their other types.
Well, so Dance of the Mans, if you've got 8 mana or more, is going to produce quite a bit of power, provided you've got, the requisite artifacts and enchantments in your graveyard. But how are you going to get the Wishclaw Talisman in your graveyard? Like, just sacrifices Doom Foretold, I suppose?
Well, and if it gets destroyed by planar cleansing.
Oh, sure, that makes sense.
You can also discard it to, like, when you have Thought Erasure and it's on top of your deck, there's just little things that come up that way,
Yep.
The having the dance engine, though, really rewards you for having just cards that will end up getting back, but most of the other cards in this deck are pretty well set up to take advantage of dance anyway. Like, obviously the Golden Egg and Guild Globe give you 2 different cantrips. so that you can play like a mini sort of eggs deck. Golden Egg, obviously, 2 cost, new 1, 2 cost, draw a card, and you can pay 1 and sack it to get a mana of any color. You can pay 2 and sack it to gain 3 life. And then Guild Globe. It's another one that when it comes into play, when it enters the battlefield, you draw a card, and you can sack it and pay 2 to get 2 mana of different colors. The main things these things do is just cycle for 2 mana. The Guild Globe just makes sure that your mana is easy, which is, much appreciated in a deck that's using Kaya's Wrath and blue cards, Island and Kaya's Wrath. But the Golden Egg is similar. It's just it gives you the extra option of being able to get 3 life if you want. The other thing, though, is that Oath of Kaya and Doom Foretold are both excellent enchantments for going to your graveyard. Oath of Kaya being a legendary enchantment means that the second one is going to force the first one to go to the graveyard anyway. So that then when you eventually do the dance, you're getting an extra Lightning Helix from the Oath coming back.
Oh, cool.
And then Doom Foretold, obviously, whenever Doom Foretold gives you all that value, it goes to the graveyard anyway. And even if it doesn't give you the value, if you just have to sack it to itself, you still got to get another. You have another enchantment to get back. But what's really potent here is that Doom Foretold can actually eat the golden eggs and guild globes.
Yeah, I actually think that's like the main thing about those cards. They're kind of like a weird 187 permanent, right? Like they're the worst opt in the world for twice the casting cost of an opt, but they give you the bonus of just having, a piece of cardboard on the table that you can eat with the Doom Foretold. And that kind of prolongs the life cycle of Doom Foretold. Or even, I think if you had to like play the Doom Foretold and sacrifice the Doom Foretold to itself, even before you want to, you did get a commensurate amount of non-token permanents out of your opponent, probably.
Yeah. And so I think the Wishclaw Talisman is cute here. I'm not so sure that it's going to end up in the final version.
See, I like the Wishclaw Talisman a lot in this deck. Like, I think that one of the play patterns you can easily have is to, kind of clear your opponent out with Thought Erasure and or Planar Cleansing, perhaps with Teferi, to do it at instant speed, kind of neutralize everything, and then use the Wishclaw Talisman to get and play Doom Foretold. And then you leave your opponent a Wishclaw Talisman. They can't use it on your turn. It goes to their turn. But the Doom Foretold triggers on their upkeep, right? So they're in kind of a bind, right? Like if they
can just use it.
Yeah, but then they might not have a permanent in play if they use it. If they use it, then they might have to sacrifice discard the.
But they have the option. If you didn't give them a Wishclaw Talisman in the first place, they wouldn't even have the option.
Well, but I wouldn't have the Doom Foretold if I did. In my imagination, I wouldn't have Doom Foretold if I didn't use the Wishclaw Talisman to go get it.
Okay, let's imagine they have no other permanents.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm in.
You use the Wishclaw Talisman and go get the Doom Foretold. And now what? They can sack the Wishclaw Talisman if they want to hold off Doom Foretold for a turn. So it's like your 7-cost Doom Foretold did nothing the first turn. Or alternatively, they can just sack Wishclaw Talisman and go get something that destroys Doom Foretold.
Like a D-Spark?
D-Spark would work.
Yeah, I think that D-Spark...
Fortify or anything like that.
I think D-Spark is going to jump real high in value in the new format because of Doom Foretold.
That's a good point.
Like, so I think that, I was just spitballing, hey, we're going to have to be ready for Doom Foretold as a permanent, right? So enchantment is going to be a thing. It's going to be a thing you might have to deal with in main deck. It's certainly going to be a thing that you're going to have to deal with at some point if you want to win a tournament. What are the options? Night of Autumn. I mean, you're already behind if you're trying to get a 187 on the Doom Foretold with the Night of Autumn. D-Spark, you can zinger that Doom Foretold before you ever have to sacrifice a permanent. That's my thought right now.
So, yeah, I mean, you do got to be careful, though, just because of just how many amazing threats there are that cost 3. But I think D-Spark has definitely gained some new utility because of that Doom Foretold interaction.
Yeah, I think that like there are certainly going to be a lot of threats that cost 3 that are dangerous, and I think that we can revisit some of those. But I just think that that Despark is actually going to be pretty flexible anyway, because there's also going to be a lot of threats that cost more than 3, and Despark is like a scalpel, right? It's not a hose, you know. You don't just spray Desparks at everybody. You're like, all right, I'm going to cut out this thing. So here's my double hot take. One, why is this deck? I don't even know if this counts as a hot take. Hot question. Why is this deck even better than like Esper Hero? If I were to play an Esper deck, why is this better than me just playing Esper Hero right now? Or alternately, just playing Doom Foretold in a hero deck?
I think that blanking your opponent's removal or making your opponent's removal really bad. There's some value in that, in theory, you know? Because it's like Oath, like for instance, if you got it in the head-to-head, Oath of Kea is going to be real good against a hero. Sure.
But the hero decks come with a lot more Planeswalkers than 4 Teferis, and there are some powerful long game cards in the Doom Foretold deck.
I mean, aren't Planeswalkers pretty bad against Doom Foretold?
I mean, Doom Foretold can eat the Planeswalkers for sure,
and leave them in a horrible bind, right? Like you eat one on the way in, and then what?
I mean,
are you going to play one?
I don't know. Like, you know, if you bounce Doom Foretold to Teferi or something, that's not a great option. Right, that's not.
That doesn't really help you much, no.
I guess it depends.
Then you just play the Doom Foretold again and eat the Teferi.
Yeah, or some other nonsense. I just meant kind of in the abstract, but I guess there is no in the abstract.
You just gave the context.
Yeah, because this deck is part of the metagame now, so you know there's no observation without the observer, right? So.
I do think that you can play Doom Foretold, and in fact, I would like to play 4 Doom Foretolds, even in just like a Orzhov Knights deck.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think Doom Foretold is just a fantastic card.
I was just thinking, I don't have a deck yet, I was just thinking as an idea to play it in like kind of an Obzon 187 creatures deck, where you're playing like the whole like Civic Wayfinder brand of creatures, those guys who are like leaving a
Bull Drifters.
Yeah, just here's my random 2/1 or 2/2 body, but I did something. So you just keep, you're getting a little card advantage, but there's just some garbage to throw away to the Doom Foretold. And like, you potentially could be putting on pressure. I found the Doom Foretold to be incredibly, increasingly effective the better the opponent's cards were, which is a weird situation, right? Like, so if they've got like super premium, Feasting Troll Kings and Garrix and stuff, man, is the Doom Foretold good, right? It's like kind of bad against like red weenies.
Yeah, because like cards that are expensive will frequently be worse to sacrifice.
Yeah, or just like there's just. I mean, obviously, it's also like a 4 casting cost card. So if your opponent's just trucking in with 2 and 3 casting cost haste creatures or guys that already got their card advantage value, it might just be too slow. Even though that triggered ability is something fierce.
So are you talking like, for instance, a red deck at all like MTG Max's red deck, mono red deck that's 3 Castle Embereth, 18 Mountains? With the big twist here is 4 Cavalcade of Calamity. And this is 4 Shocks, 4 Chandra Acolyte of Flame, which is just incredible with the Cavalcade. 4 Chandra Spitfire, 4 Fervent Champion, 4 Ginger Brute, 4 Grim Initiate, 4 Scorch Spitter, 3 Torben Thrain of Redfell, and then 4 Light Up the Stage.
Wow, so...
this is a different kind of red deck.
It's funny... because I went to go look at MTG Max's 5.0 list, and MTG Max actually has 2 very different red aggro decks at 5.0. So, this mono red one, it's like Ginger Brute and Fervent Champion, like with no real extra value built, right? These are just 1/1 haste creatures that MTG Max can play on turn 1 to, or potentially turn 2 to just turn on Light Up the Stage, right? Like, that's what they're there for?
Or even just turn 3 to make the turn 3 devastating with Cavalcade of Calamity. Or turn 4. Like you're just setting up big turns. Because if you just have Torben Thrain of Redfell or the Cavalcade, you're really making your creatures with 1 power or less much more dangerous.
Yeah. So Cavalcade of Calamity is a card that folks might not be familiar with. This is a card that has had some chatter around it, but I don't think it's performed at a high level yet, right? Even though it's been around. So it's an enchantment for 1 and a red. Whenever a creature you control with power 1 or less attacks, Cavalcade of Calamity deals 1 damage to the player or planeswalker that creature is attacking. So this deck is full of, like, it's funny, like Chandra's Spitfire, for example, is theoretically a 1 power creature, right? But when Chandra's Spitfire attacks with a Cavalcade of Calamity in play, the Cavalcade of Calamity will trigger on account of Chandra's Spitfires being 1 power, but because they just took non-combat damage, the Chandra Spitfire will grow, right? That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Obviously, Fervent Champion, Ginger Brute.
Yeah, I mean, that's 2 new Mons, or 2 new Raging Goblins, right? Like, and that's a big part of it. But the Scorch Spitter is it was always good with Cavalcade of Calamity, but basically all these Cavalcade of Calamity combos are crushing it now because Torben gives you another payoff so that you actually are more reliably getting your money from them.
Oh, Torben!
Because like when you
such a cool card. So Torben, Thane of Red Fell, is a legendary dwarf noble for 4. So he's got a monstrous 3 red pips in the upper right corner along with 1 colorless for a 2/4. But if a red source you control would deal damage to an opponent or a permanent an opponent controls, it deals that much damage plus 2 instead. So Torben himself is basically a 4/4 then, right? Right, because if he's dealing 2, he deals 2 plus 2. Yep. And then all your other stuff, I guess with the exception of Ginger Brute, is also, plus 2. I mean, Chandra Acolyte of Flame is just the all-time best card with Cavalcade of Calamity, right? Like, you're just spitting these tokens that are dealing a ton of damage.
That's incredible, particularly if you've got something like Chandra Acolyte of Flame that follows it up, giving you multiple hasty 1 power attackers that are then going to trigger the Cavalcade so that the Chandra Spitfire does even more.
Yeah, so one of the things that I really like about this deck is, look, red aggro isn't like a secret or anything. People are playing sweepers, always have been. People are prepared for small creatures. But you could just like leave a Cavalcade of Calamity and or a Chandra Acolyte of Flame after some sort of a Wrath effect, and you're just there. It's just like, you don't even have to draw anything. You're just online.
Yeah, Grim Initiate too. When Grim Initiate dies, amass 1.
Oh.
That's a little bit of survivability through a sweeper.
Yeah, and not only that, but the Grim Initiate, when it amasses 1, makes a 1/1. Yep. So the Cavalcade of Calamity is just going to be further reinforced by that card.
There's another card he's using in the sideboard, Redcap Melee, that I think is seems quite solid. Instant, deal 4 damage to target creature or player. If a non-red permanent is dealt damage this way, you sacrifice a land. So if you were to just think about this card as 1 mana instant, sacrifice a land to deal 4 damage to target creature or planeswalker, there are some worlds where that card has purpose, where that card is like something that you might be interested in.
I mean, can you imagine if it said creature or player instead?
Yeah, I know. You'd be all about it.
Oh yeah, it wouldn't even be a question that this card would be such a player.
But the fact that it may not be able to hit players, but it can hit red creatures or planeswalkers at no extra cost.
No downside.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
So here's the thing.
Particularly if you got to kill opponents' Torbens. On the topic of the land, Castle Embereth is just excellent here, right?
Yeah, it's fantastic. Like you can actually this is a timing issue, right? If you do the +1/+0 before you trigger your Cavalcade of Calamity, you're going to miss some triggers. But if you do it afterwards, you're doing great.
So I think this new style of red is going to call for different sort of some different parameters because it's going to be a little bit more combo-y than average. So actually, yeah, as you mentioned, MTG Max actually put up 5-0 records with 2 different League decks. The other one was quite a bit different. It's a black-red aggro deck making use of Bone Crusher Giant and Murderous Rider as the big adventure Necrotal payoffs, and then Robber of the Rich and Rankle, Master of Pranks, already showing up.
Like, I know that it's been a while since you have been a red aggro guy, but I really, when I saw this deck the first time, I thought this is like the Patrick Chapin All-Stars. This is like all the cards...
I told you Robber of Rich was going to show up, man.
Not just Robber of Rich, Bone Crusher Giant, Rankle, Master of Pranks. It's like all the cards that you loved coming up in the early weeks. You're just like, every single thing you're just like, oh man, these are all the cards Patrick liked. So you know what I love about this deck the most? Absolute A number one, Robber of the Rich plus Rotting Regisaur. So Rotting Regisaur has this dopey, horrible, at the beginning of your upkeep, discard a card downside, but he just keeps the Robber of the Rich going, right? Like, he makes it so they don't catch up with you.
Yep, that is nice.
It's such a weird little synergy because it's typically a downside thing, but the problem with Robber of the Rich is when he gets too successful, right? Like, he can't... You know, you're just using all this extra card advantage so you're not spending cards out of your hand. But his buddy, the 7/6 dinosaur, he's got him hooked up.
So here's a question, man. Is Spawn of Mayhem really the best for that spot instead of, like, Oathsworn Knight?
Well...
Like, I like Oathsworn Knight. That's the one card that I like that's missing from this. I like Oathsworn Knight.
I don't know. I think
you're not into it?
Well, so it depends how you want to think about this. Like, this deck has got, like, very, very high expectation of being able to deal damage on turn 3, right? So you had, like, Dreadhorde Butcher or Robber of the Rich, which are haste creatures on turn 2. They're probably going to be around on turn 3. So if you could just get Spawn of Mayhem off for 3 mana, like, the card is pretty powerful.
Yeah, but you're not... are you going to get it off 80% of the time?
I don't know. Like, I'm not sure.
Even in the games where you get it off, is it definitely better than an Oathsworn than the Oathsworn Knight?
No, I mean it's not clear, right? The thing that is, I mean, it's not even the word clear isn't even clear here. It's just, you know, it's big. I think, like, one of the things about MTG Max's deck here is, like, this is a kind of deck that it's very likely to have good initiative early relative to the opponent, and I think he just wants to finish the games. Like, the decks like that Esper deck we were looking at earlier are just so much more powerful. Like, this deck's like Gutter Bones and Knight of the Ebon Legion, which are pretty weak mid-game rips, and so if he just, like, gets you down by 6 on turn 4 or something, I think, like, he's just happy. That's just the thought.
All right.
Like, I mean, he's also got, like, the more you can set up that way, like, just getting just power, like this is, like, meaningful power. If you're Dreadhorde Butcher or Robber the Rich into Spawn of Mayhem, and then you Rankle on turn 4, like, what is that, like 9 power attacking? Like, that's really, really good, I think. And nothing against Oathsworn Knight. I'm just like, he doesn't have that same level of power.
I got a feeling by the end of this format, that guy's going to start showing up more. But yeah, Spawn of Mayhem's pretty good, and in fact, Spawn of Mayhem shows up also in the mono black, the mono black list being used here by Ghoul Dukak that has 4 Gutter Bones and 4 Knight of the Ebon Legion also. But this is an Ayara First of Lochthwain deck. It's got the, as you might expect, Midnight Reaper, but the which with Footlight Fiend and stuff like that, it really makes the Rankle sacrifice ability better. But then Priest of Forgotten Gods is actually showing up nice here. The big thing here, though, is Ayara First of Lochwain, and then the Order of Midnight, which I actually just think MTG Max's deck would just be so much better if it had 4 Order of Midnights.
Well, maybe Order of Midnight instead of Spawn of Mayhem, which I know completely undoes all the stuff that I just said.
Or
about,
what instead of Raging Regisaur?
Well,
I don't know.
I like the Regisaur in combination with the Robber of the Rich, which doesn't mean that you should necessarily play it, right? So the rotting, like, you could just play cheap cards, right? Like Order of Midnight costs 2. Like, I mean, like, so here's the thing. Like, Spawn of Mayhem is expensive, right? It's a 4/4 flyer, which is big and flying, right? And it doesn't have the potential size downside risk of Oathsworn Knight, which is big if it's, if nobody's bothering it, right? But like Order of Midnight, like there's really good stuff that you might just want to get back in this deck. And it's also just a 2-drop, right? That's flying.
Yeah, it's a flying, it's an evasive 2-drop, but it's also just like way better Gravedigger.
It's exactly Gravedigger for the mana, but you get a flyer instead of just a regular 2/2, but he can't block.
No, but you can do it in installments.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair, a fair comparison. Like this card's quite good.
Yeah, so I don't know, man. Do you like the black version better or the black red? Because Bone Crusher Giant is hard to get away from.
Well, I mean, Priest of Forgotten Gods, I could get behind Priest of Forgotten Gods, especially when you're combining it with things that have triggers like Footlight Fiend. I don't know. I think I like the black red version better. I think that the haste is very attractive.
Now, that red Cavalcade of Calamity deck we saw earlier, there isn't a red splash black version that uses Priest of Forgotten Gods, is there? Because that's a deck that has stuff where that's just kind of like sack a Grim Initiate, who cares, right? But then also sacrificing Chandra Acolyte of Flames tokens. Besides, at the end of the day, the priest only has, 1 power also.
So Gasotamu played a 5/0 deck that played 2 copies of Priest of Forgotten Gods. This is a very different deck. Like, it's got black creatures like Orzhov Enforcer, which obviously, if you're going to sacrifice something that has afterlife, then you're getting potentially more fuel for your priest. It's got like Midnight Reaper, which is something that can benefit from losing creatures. But then there's also cards like Gutter Bones that you can just buy back. This deck has some red to it, so it's kind of odd built to me, right? So Chandra Acolyte of Flame is a 3-drop in this deck, which is double red, and then it's also got like Bedevil and Ayara, which are 3-drops that are heavier on the black. But it's just got like this whole thing with like Cauldron Familiars and Witches Ovens. Like this is like a red-black aggro deck that Sam Black would love. That's kind of like what I thought of when I saw it.
I think Sam would pick different numbers for a lot of these things, but yeah, I mean, if you just mean the whole Aristocrats sort of direction, yeah.
Yeah, like Chandra Acolyte of Flame and Priest of Forgotten Gods are both really good cards, right? Like, it's just like they're weirdly proportioned here.
I do think that the Cauldron Familiar Witch's Oven interaction is quite solid. Remember, each time you have a Witch's Oven, you can tap it. So you have Witch's Oven, you tap it and sack the Cauldron Familiar to get back to get a food, and then you can sack the food to get the Cauldron Familiar back. So you have each time you get it back, you're draining your opponent for 1. And then you also get to trigger all your things that care about things going away. Whether it's the Midnight Reaper or Mayhem Devil or whatever. Yara carrying on the way in. And so it's just kind of a nice little interaction that you can, each turn, you can just drain your opponent for 1 with no mana cost.
Oh my gosh, Patrick, is this stupidly going to be the best force field ever? I mean, like, is that just going to be a thing?
I mean, you get
play?
to block too.
Wait, it seems awesome to me.
Yeah, it's a great combo.
Like, it's just like just a great combination that could go in a bunch of different decks. Like, it's weird that it's in an aggro deck here. Like I don't know. Maybe this is I hesitate to use the word combo, but like a combo that you would add to like even a green based, food matters type deck, right? Like that grindy card for 1 and a G that cares about when you sacrifice food.
Yeah, the crumbs.
Yeah, like I don't know, like the Cauldron Familiar only costs 1. Witch's Oven costs 1 and doesn't even have a mana cost attached to it. Like, you could just be making mad food, sacrificing mad food, force fielding your opponent's face, grinding, drawing. Like, I don't know. This seems absurdly good to me for the amount of investment. And the other thing is, like, Cauldron Familiar, Witch's Oven, it seems to me this just beats Doom Foretold, right? Like, Cauldron Familiar, Witch's Oven is just like, oh, I see that you have an expensive forecasting cost enchantment. I have a guy whose job it is to jump into the graveyard. Let's see who wins this race. Like,
well, you don't really get ahead though.
But you don't need to get ahead.
You don't even keep up with it because like Witch's Oven does take a sacrifice.
Well, so if you have like anything though, that's fair. Like just having Cauldron Familiar, Witch's Oven doesn't beat Doom Foretold, but I think like if you have any other elements of your engine going, but I guess maybe that's true of anything that's a persistent source of card advantage on the battlefield.
Like, yeah, I think so.
It is impressive to me. I think if you have 2 Cauldron Familiars and a Witch's Oven, more power to you. Nobody's going to get you. You're going to beat them, and you're going to have 100 life.
Dude, what about Claim the Firstborn when you've got all these Witch's Ovens?
Wow.
You claim the Firstborn, and then you stick them in the oven.
Yeah, Claim the Firstborn is great. It's that threaten for only 1 mana.
Yep.
Yeah.
Smother threaten.
It's very, very exciting to me. The mana effectiveness on this. And there's, no shortage of ways to benefit from these interactions.
Do you think we're going to continue to see Claim the Firstborn as a main deckable card? This format looks fast enough. I mean, obviously some people just don't have very many creatures, but like at least from the week 1 metagame, it sure looks like enough people have them that it's worth the price of admission.
So I think that if I were going to revisit this deck, I would want to have more copies of Ayara, First of Locthwain, because this deck doesn't have like an overabundance of sacrifice outlets. Like you want to have you don't want to just claim the Firstborn for 1 and then get them for like I tax you for 2 or 3 and then you can have your guy back. Like that's kind of a waste of a card. So you do want to draw a card off of it, or you do want to make a food out of it. And I think this deck is a little shy on sacrifice outlets. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it could stand to have a few more.
So, and the other thing is, like, I think Mayhem Devil is cute, but, like, really? Like, Witch's Oven, Ayara, Fabled Passage. I mean, it is cute that you can trigger it with Fabled Passage. But, like, how do you feel about Mayhem Devil?
I'd have to see what kind of removal people are really playing, because I got a feeling that Mayhem Devil, he does everything you want, but he might actually just line up the wrong way against the format and not be quite efficient enough,
Well, like, as an example, if you've got Mayhem Devil in play and then you Angrath's Rampage somebody, like, they have to sacrifice, right? So Mayhem Devil gets a little extra money. I'm just saying, I think I'd rather just have more copies of Ayara. That's the thing. Like, Ayara in the abstract, when you're playing with cards like Gutter Bones and Cauldron Familiar, is actually pretty good. And Mayhem Devil in the abstract is, I mean, I hate to denigrate Gnarled Masses. It's just a Gnarled Mass. Like, it's not scaring anybody in 2019. We're not talking about, like, 2005 when a 3/3 for 3 was going to hold down the battlefield. Like, this, not the same world.
So it's not the exact same Esper deck as we were talking about before, but there is this Jeskai deck, dude. Did you see this? This Fae of Wishes Jeskai deck? So on the surface, it looks like a Teferi, Narset, Sarkhan the Masterless, Ugin, Jeskai Planeswalker deck, right? And you're like, okay, so Deafening Clarion and Time Wipe, that makes sense for sweepers. Card Advantage, it has Shimmer of Possibility and Drawn from Dreams. A little weird, but okay, I guess.
The numbers are a little odd on Shimmer of Possibility and Drawn from Dreams here, but I'll accept it.
And then the twist, though, is Fires of Invention.
Yeah.
3 in a red enchantment, and there's 4 copies. 3 in a red, you can cast spells only during your turn, which helps explain the use of Shimmer of Possibility, but you can cast spells only during your turn, and you can cast no more than 2 spells each turn. You may cast spells with converted mana costs less than or equal to the number of lands you control without paying their mana costs. So, first and foremost, this thing is like washes your colors, right?
Yeah. It's only 4, and but
it also is free.
Yeah, you play it, and then you can play another 4 or less the same turn.
Right. So, like, for the turn you play it, it's like it does this Bloodbraid Elf sort of thing where it's just free, but it also washes your colors, which really has some interesting implications when you have 4 copies of Fae of Wishes. The sideboard here, it has some cards you'd expect, like Sarkhan the Masterless and Chandra Awakened Inferno, maybe even Mass Manipulation. But there's some real weirdos. Like, who in the world expects Command the Dreadhorde or Plane-Wide Celebration?
Well,
or Casualties of War.
Casualties of War is my favorite in this one because it's such.
Or Garruk, Cursed Huntsman, or the Elder Spell.
I'm into all of them things. This deck has
Kaya's Wrath too.
Yeah, this deck has 4 interplanar beacons, so respect. You would be able to just cast Garruk if you had to. It is cute,
but
though.
Garruk, Cursed Huntsman, you could easily just cast off the interplanar beacon.
Yeah,
no question. If you had 2 of them, not easily, but you could get there. Casualties of War and Plane-Wide Celebration and Kaya's Wrath. I mean, these are all cards that it's like, yep, I can definitely only play with Fires of Invention.
But here's the thing. If you've got Fires of Invention in play, right, you can use Fae of Wishes, and there's the implication is that you can cast the Sorcery Adventure Granted for 3 and a blue. So that's 4, right? And Fires of Invention is 4. So presumably, if you got Fires of Invention down, you can grant it, right? But the secret combo of this deck is that it's like half land. It's like 27 land, much of which is temples, right? So,
and then there's a lot of card draw.
Yeah, the mid-game land drops that you're making don't necessarily have to come into play untapped because you don't care, right? But you do want to actually expand how many lands that you have. But you're also refining your draw a little bit with these temples, and you just go to town. I think this deck is more funny than I think that it's good. But I think it would be a riot to play.
So one of the things that is pretty strong is bounce Fae of Wishes when you have 6 mana. See, once you have the Fires of Invention down, you can go Fae of Wishes back to your hand for 2 mana. So you can play Fae of Wishes, get whatever you want, bounce Fae of Wishes, and then play it again. I guess even with 4 mana, you still are able to do it. But my thinking is just that if you can just Fae of Wishes each turn and then play whatever the spell is that you want, you're kind of doing it, right? Like, so for 6 mana each turn, you're able to just granted yourself whatever you want and then bounce the Fae of Wishes and still play a 6-cost card.
Yeah,
and that's part of the reason why there's all these Garruk, Casualty of War, Command the Dreadhorde, like why there's cards that cost 6 or more, you know?
So there are a lot of cool things you can do with Fae Wishes. One of them is once you've already got Fires of Invention on the battlefield and a certain amount of mana, right? So the most expensive card in the deck or sideboard, I believe, that you would actually cast is Plane-Wide Celebration, right? Which is 7. So you kind of never need more than 7 mana, right? So any lands that you have in excess of 7 can become half of a Fae of Wishes, right? Now, the secret superpower of Fae of Wishes is that you can do this utilizing your mana, not necessarily on your own turn, right? So most of your action due to Fires of Invention has to be on your own turn, and you don't actually use your mana, even though you have the mana in play. So it's actually giving you a little utility. So if you're like, all right, I'm past 7 lands, or let's say you just have no interest in ever casting a Plane-Wide Celebration, you could just not go that high, and then you get like half of a tutor for whatever you have in hand, like if it's extra lands or whatever, or you have permanents like Narset, right? That could be putting additional cards in your hand to power you up. But then this just becomes like Demonic Tutor every turn that gets you like, you know, these massively powerful cards that you don't have to pay mana for. Like, you know, if you're getting Chandra Awakened Inferno is actually the best example. Like you just get Chandra Awakened Inferno, get Garruk, you just play them both, right? Like they're going to be pretty messed up, I think, the opponent, unless they've got some sort of, you know, big sweeper that can affect Planeswalkers.
Plane-Wide Celebration, man, I don't think it's a card to just gloss over too quickly. That's an incredibly powerful effect, right? Like choose 4, you may choose the same mode more than once. Get a 2/2 citizen that's all colors. Get a permanent of your choice from your graveyard to your hand, proliferate, or gain 4. So if you have Plane-Wide Celebration, when you have Garruk, you get to just ultimate immediately. And if you've got Plane-Wide Celebration and you have drawn Fae of Wishes at any point, Fae of Wishes is a really powerful permanent to get back into your hand.
Yeah.
And it's not like the get it back to your hand is that's a draw for with powerful selection. Your ability to grind that way is just going to be incredible, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think the card is still... I don't know.
How about you're playing against a red deck and you gain 16 life?
Yeah, the card has applications. That's why it's one of the... Like, when you're in the situation where it's good, then you go get it. I think that its application is narrower than the application of many of these other cards. The things that I think that are weird about this deck is that you have, you know, even that proliferate capability from Plane-Wide Celebration, and there are like no applicable ultimates in this deck, right? There's a ton of Planeswalkers.
Besides Garruk, right?
But not really. What's Garruk's ultimate?
+3 to all your creatures.
There's no guys.
Dude, my wolves, man, and then the other guys from the celebration.
Sure.
Because I made a citizen and then I proliferated, so then I get an extra wolf, an extra citizen.
I mean, that is a thing I suppose you could do.
An extra dragon.
I mean,
proliferating a dragon is nice, dude.
Patrick, if you're going,
your Narset goes up to 2, so you can get one last look.
If you're going with this deck, right? This deck's got the machinery online, right? Like, I've got my Fae of Wishes engine going with Fires of Invention on the battlefield, and the thing that I choose to do is, I mean, I think you would be more likely to win if you just got like the Chandra or the Sarkhan, and then just deployed more Planeswalkers. But maybe you're right. I mean, I think the Plane-Wide Celebration is largely there for, you know, producing a bunch of citizens or, you know, gaining a ton of life when you're like, all right, my battlefield's better than their battlefield, but they might just kill me off the top of their deck. I also think the deck has a cool combo, which is just Time Wipe Fae of Wishes. Right, so you can just play the Fae of Wishes after you've exiled it and then Time Wipe and get it back. And, like, meanwhile, you're also, like, killing all their guys, which is pretty good.
Sure. I just wish there was something to do with your mana besides bounce the Fae of Wishes.
Yeah.
Because, you know, you end up in that spot where you're just not spending your mana anymore.
Yeah, I think this deck maybe would want some castles, like maybe white or blue castles. So
that's kind of interesting.
The Esper deck that we talked about kind of at the top of the cast has got like a solid 1 Castle Vantress. And when I played against this deck online, I mean, I was like ahead a lot of the time with various kind of decks, but they would just have the Castle Vantress and they would just dig to the card that they needed. Their deck is so powerful that like getting 1 copy of the Dance or, you know, what have you, or a Teferi can just get them right back in the game, even though you were ostensibly ahead. I think that this Jeskai deck maybe just wants one, you know, 1 castle or 1 of each castle or something. Not the red castle, but I'd take a white castle in this deck.
Yeah, I can see it. Plus, dude, then proliferate harder. So did you see these new form of blue-green decks? I mean, they're not the most different because of the whole, of course, when you're Nissa shaking the Who Shakes the Worlding, kind of takes you down a path. But the use of Oko, Thief of Crowns, is a 4X in both. The blue-green one, Shea Hulud, 86. First of all, one copy of your beloved Trail of Crumbs. But then 4 Wicked Wolf and 4 Troll King, which I'm sure you're into.
Yeah, I love this deck. I think this deck is... I mean, of like the early decks, I think this is one of the most exciting ones to try. I think that if you look at the structure of this deck, it's got Gilded Goose and Oko Thief of Crowns. I have really, really come to appreciate the ability to sacrifice a food for Wicked Wolf. Wicked Wolf is, a 3/3 creature for 4, comes down, and fights. Like the ability to become 4/4 or even bigger. Like sometimes you want to make a 5/5 Wicked Wolf by eating some food and then ensuring that he's going to win the fight. That's pretty cool.
Definitely.
So the sex,
and you're already interested in Gilded Goose anyway, but Oko Thief of Crowns is just proven so strong, right? Like its ability to just make food immediately makes it so durable. And between 4 Arboreal Grazers and 4 Gilded Goose, you can just so reliably get it down in the second turn where there's just no hope of assailing it.
Oh my god. If you're like many decks, right? Like maybe not the red aggro deck, because the red aggro deck's actually probably going to still be attacking you with Robber of the Rich or something in this situation. But there are a fair number of decks that, are oriented towards turning their cardboard sideways at you. If you're like first turn Arboreal Grazer, second turn Oko make a food, they're cooked already. It's like turn 2 and they're like, don't know how I'm going to win this game. Right? Like you've got a blocker that's super effective for that stage of the game, already protecting this Planeswalker that, while it doesn't really have an ultimate, is going off already. And then, what's the worst case scenario? Like, they're just, 2 food, and then you play a Wicked Wolf. And you're like, all right, done. Not going to win. The other thing is I think this deck is absolutely outstanding at grinding against control decks. Gilded Goose plus Oko is very, very powerful. Like, Gilded Goose and Oko both can make food. Oko can turn food into, usable resources.
As far as the Wicked Wolf direction goes, do you like it better with this blue-green style, or what happens when you have Wicked Wolf alongside Charming Prince and Teferi Time Raveler, such as the BAMP version Dilly G10 played? So Charming Prince here is obviously he's got these other options, the whole 2/2, scry 2, or gain 3, if you're in a pinch. But the real reason you're here, the charm mode that you're in for is the blink. Blink exile another target creature you own, return it to the battlefield under your control at the beginning of the next end step.
So I'm a big fan of the Tolsimir Wicked Wolf kind of engine, but probably in a different deck than this. So nothing against this deck. I think it's probably pretty exciting.
You don't like Charming Prince just resetting the Wicked Wolf?
I think that's probably good. I would play that engine in
it washes the counters off.
But I would play that deck. Well, you don't necessarily have to have a counter on it, right? Like you could get a counter the second time. I would play this in a black deck, not a blue deck. So I love Oko. I love Oko to death. But the problem is, Tolsim, it's just not going hard enough, right? Like this deck is had this great Wolf engine, but is dedicating 4 Gilded Goose and 3 Wicked Wolf and 2 Tolsimir. What if you went real hard in the Wolf direction all the way up to Garruk? I think Tolsimir at 5 and to Garruk up at 6 is it's not the most powerful thing you can do in the format, but if you don't take care of that Garruk within a turn or two, it's basically unbeatable.
I mean, if you're gonna play Tolsimir and Garruk and Wicked Wolf, what about Night Pack Ambusher?
A million % you should be Night Pack Ambushering. Absolutely. So like I think that's not a deck that actually showed up in these 5-0 lists, but it's one of the most exciting overall strategies I think in the format. To me, like Tolsimir into Garruk is like you activate Garruk, make wolves, have Tolsimir. Obviously, Tolsimir is creating triggers for those wolves. You can set up your wolves so that they will die, and then Garruk is going to go into overrun mode unless they take care of a bunch of your permanents right now. You pretty much got them, because like now Garruk is going to be making 5/5 or bigger depending on your ambusher situation. Wolves that basically assassinate everything the opponent does every single turn, and you've got all these other huge guys. And the creatures aren't that expensive. That's the thing. Like this is like the structure of a green ramp deck, and it's just like the cost of an Abzan midrange deck.
Okay, so what about the other Bant one, Young One 413 played? It's another 4 Oko, 4 Teferi deck, but instead of being a Nissa who shakes the world style of build, it's a Hero of Precinct 1 deck.
For me, jury's a little out on this. I kind of like what's going on, but I don't know, I feel like a lot of these other strategies are pushing the good stuff harder. Like I actually think like if I had to choose between the two Bant decks, I think the Charming Prince might just be a better 2-drop than the Hero, right? Like, I mean, what are you doing?
I don't know.
Hero on turn 2 into Oko or Teferi?
Oko or Teferi? Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Or Deputy of Detention.
Deputy of Detention I'm not writing home about, but like Oko or Teferi, I that's cool. I mean, is that better than the Prince? It also, like, some of this stuff doesn't make any sense, right? Like, Glass Casket seems like a weird removal card for this deck, and Wicked Wolf seems like a weird removal for this deck. It just doesn't have any synergies at all.
Oh, right? It does. You got 4 Oko.
Yeah, you have like a really light Oko package for 2 Wicked Wolves, but like, as much as you have, Oko supporting Wicked Wolf, you have Wicked Wolf not supporting Hero.
Yeah, I mean, that's true.
I mean, like, why are you playing Glass Casket? There are other cards that you could play that maybe make more sense for this strategy. And like if it's me, I don't know. Like, Wicked Wolf is like, it's a good card. It's like, very solid 3 out of 5 stars card, I think. But this deck is not pushing Wicked Wolf very hard. Like, I don't see why I wouldn't rather just have Frilled Mystic instead of Wicked Wolf for this deck, where Frilled Mystic has more natural synergies, including with Teferi, and certainly including with Hero, and it's getting a similar amount of card advantage. We get like just a 3/3 for 4 on the battlefield that didn't kill something or didn't kill something meaningful and is not triggering Hero. It's just fine. Like, I don't know.
So we talked about it last week, but the Great Henge wasted no time showing up. Chea Jom playing mono green. This is the style of Nissa Who Shakes the World deck I can get into. I like Castle Garenbrig decks anyway. And Yorvo, Lord of Garenbrig, and Questing Beast, I kind of actually... I mean, it's not that... And Barkhide Troll, too, although I would play the 4th Troll. I kind of just like this. I'm just putting some busty stuff down per mana.
So, interesting choices in this deck. So, Chea Jom played 3 Leafkin Druids and 4 Paradise Druids, but no Incubation Druids. And they played 3 Barkhide Troll and no Growth Chamber Guardian. Right, so...
I actually like that.
Yeah?
Yeah, I would just play Barkhide Troll and Accelerators for my 2s. So,
first of all, I would make a strong argument that Incubation Druid is a better card than both Leafkin Druid and
I like the Leafkin Druid here.
Why?
But I don't know.
Doesn't do anything.
Dude, taps for GG.
I don't know. I mean, the Incubation Druid taps for GGG and attacks for like 4. Right?
Yeah, Incubation Druid. I think Incubation Druid is probably worth trying.
Like, look at this deck. If you're just like turn 2 Incubation, like turn 1 anything, turn whatever you had, like if you had a Pelt Collector or not, whatever. Right? They turn 2 Incubation Druid, turn 3 Vivian Arcbow Ranger, distribute 2 counters, including 1 on the Incubation Druid. I mean, the opponent should be rattling their teeth at this point. That's pretty good. Right? Like, it just Vivian onto, even more counters on Incubation Druid, tap into the Great Henge immediately. Like, that seems way better to me than, like, almost, like, it's not, the structure is here, right? I'm not questioning that. There's, like, very good ideas that are going on. I just think that if you're going to go in the Great Henge, if you're going to go with Vivian Arcbow Ranger, Growth Chamber Guardian and Incubation Druid are better cards to me than some of the other choices that are here. Barkhide Troll is awesome. Don't get me wrong. I'd certainly play the 4th. But like all the +1/+1 counter guys that you can get, I think should be going into this deck. And I would definitely play the 4th Nissa. This deck has a ton of acceleration. Like you could easily be getting Nissa online on turn 3 if you draw Gilded Goose.
Yeah, I mean, I could see it. I don't know enough yet how the Great Henge interacts with Nissa, like if there's any quirks that would cause you to go a different route. But in my experience, in the dark, decks with 3 Nissas often want the 4th. Dude, but why are we even wasting time? We got to go out on a bang. We might as well just get to the deck that's after both of our hearts. Venom 1's Simic Flash deck. You're not into it. Oh,
I'm not saying I'm not into it. I'm sighing at the non-performance of Brazen Borrower for me in early testing.
No, he's got 3.
I was.
Oh, really, you're not.
I was super excited to play Brazen Borrower, and he just sucked for me.
Oh, I don't know. It seems pretty good.
Yeah, I know. On paper, it seems like one of the best cards of the set. He just kept getting killed by everything when I played it. But I mean, it doesn't mean anything. Obviously, this is going to be one of the early decks to watch. No surprise at all that we see 4 copies of Wildborn Preserver in a 5/0 deck coming out of the gate. Only one question for you on this list, because a lot of this stuff's pretty intuitive. I think you were right also about 24 land versus other numbers I might have suggested in previous podcasts. What do you think about those 2 opts, and would it be right to play some number of Once Upon a Time instead of opt?
I don't think it'd be right to play Once Upon a Time instead of opt, and I think that you got to find room for the 3rd and 4th opt. Yeah. I think not playing 4 opts in this deck is crazy talk. I think with Brianborn Cutthroat, I don't know. I think it's crazy talk. I would play 4 ops.
Yeah,
even just fixing your mana. I mean, I think I would play 4.
Even in games I'm losing, my Brianborn Cutthroats are like 9, 12 power. It's that card is unbelievable in this strategy. It's so good. Every single time I draw it, I'm just like so happy. Like if you just get like one mana window open and then the rest of the game, like you could just ride that Cutthroat, right? Like this deck's got opts and negates and do you like Quench? I didn't play Quench.
I don't love Quench, but I would try it. I don't hate it.
I use the Essence Capture. How do you think that one's okay? It's a little tough because of the.
It could be, but yeah, I kind of am inclined to try some Essence Capture, but I also kind of want to try Mystical Dispute.
Oh well, Venom 1 has got 4 copies of Mystical Dispute in the sideboard at least.
Yeah, but I don't know. Maybe there's just too much of these fast aggro decks. I bet Quench is okay, but in my heart of hearts, I know that the first thing I do is cut one for an opt.
I think Mystical Dispute is probably going to be a super overperformer in the format, but I think that Venom 1 is correct in playing 4 total negates between deck and sideboard as well as 4 Mystical Disputes. Like, if you were playing this deck against the Esper kind of Doom Foretold deck we were talking about at the beginning of the podcast, there's just no number of Disdainful Strokes, Mystical Disputes, and negates that I wouldn't want to have against that deck. Right? Like every single thing that they play is poison. Like, just give me any clock. Like, I'll take a Spectral Sailor. I'll take a Wildworm Preserver and not play another dude for a while. But I just got to counter everything and just get in for onesies, twosies.
All right, dude. What's your deck of the week?
I think you're right. I really like Venom 1's deck. Simic Flash I like a lot. The deck I am most excited for would be like an Abzan mid-range deck, like I talked about, which includes the Tolsimir, Friend of Wolves, Wicked Wolf.
But that didn't show up this week.
All right. So of these decks, let's go with Simic. And even though I said that I thought it was funnier than I thought it was good, I think that the Jeskai deck has such immense possibilities. Like it is funny though. You know what I mean? Like it's just a riot. Like everything you're doing is just creating smiles.
So I like the Jeskai deck from there's some technology to be figured out there. I don't know that it's done cooking, but that's like an awesome piece of technology. The award for deck that I'm never going to play realistically, and it's always going to just annoy me by showing up and doing well, is Max Attack's white deck that we didn't talk about. Like all 1-drops again, one of these Venerated Loxodon decks. Maybe I'll play it, but man, those decks always overperform.
Oh,
the deck that
I'm
is
never
actually
going to play that deck either.
The deck that's actually my deck of the week is no question Doom Foretold Esper.
Yeah,
I am in for Doom Foretold Esper.
So of the Doom Foretold Esper, you're totally in for the Castle of Antris, right? I'm telling you, that card was good in this deck. I was very, very pleasantly surprised when I saw it in action. What do you think about Dance of the Manse? I think 3 copies of it, basically an 8-drop. Like
I'm a little suspicious.
I get it. It's
I'm a little
powerful.
suspicious. Maybe it's okay. I would try it, but I'm suspicious. If I had to guess right now, I would guess that I would want to play a few more cards that interact earlier in the game because I think that my late game is going to be good enough.
My guess is if I play Dance of the Manse in this strategy, I've got 1. And that's an if, and I think that the other 2 just become Murderous Riders. Like, that card's very, very flexible. It gets its life back if you need it to. Or the other guy that I like, which maybe doesn't work in this deck, but I think still is pretty good, is the 3/1 guy who's like a Lightning Helix when he comes down. He's Death Touch and Lifelink. Just play like 2 copies of him. And like if you're just in the mirror match, you just drop it and attack them. Like this deck isn't particularly good. It's dealing with fast beatdown.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd be more interested in stuff like the Chaos. I don't think I want to play bodies that just make their removal good. But
yeah, but you
either way,
put them on a clock. I think sometimes.
Maybe I do. Maybe I don't.
All right.
All right, dude. I'll see you next week. A lot of exciting stuff.
Super exciting. All right. Thanks, Patrick. Bye-bye.
Life didn't work so great. Tried to play Dredge, he's a jailer, hey. Ghostly prison waiting for my untapped phase. Yokora trapped in amber stasis days. Lost a lot of friends, got left behind.